Hello, I'm Yusra Javed, and this is the local campaign. A mere 51% of voters showed up for the last provincial election. Among those aged 18 to 24, only 1 in 3, or 34%, voted back in 2014, according to the polling firm Campaign Research. With a new generation going to the polls for the first time this election, we need to know what's on their mind. What's important to them? Why should they care to cast a ballot? So many questions that will be answered here on the panel today. Joining me is Kyle Fitzgerald. Kyle is a political science student at the University of Toronto and also the campaign manager of Oshawa Liberal candidate McKinney Smith. Also joining us is Liam Mullins. Liam has been a volunteer for 2 years with the NDP and is working to support Nikki Lundquist in the riding of Whitby. Finally, with me is Zach Rimtula. And although Zach is not able to vote yet, he assures me he's very excited for this election and is currently the president of the Pickering Uxbridge PC Youth Association and volunteer for Peter Bethlen Falvey PC campaign in Pickering Uxbridge. So, gentlemen, I just want to reiterate that this is not a debate. This is a conversation that we, as active participants of this election, are having to understand first-time voters in Ontario. Noting that, I want to get to know all of you a little bit better. So I guess my first question for all of you is, why is it that at such a young age, all of you were so politically active? Kyle, I'll bring it to you with the first question.
Sure. So first off, thanks for having us, Yusra. This is a really important conversation. And just to touch on what you mentioned in the intro there, it's actually worse than that when you look at voter turnout. Because for the first time in Confederation back in 2011, our voter turnout dropped below 50% for the first time. So there's clearly an issue that we're having with voter turnout, and we need to work to resolve that. But to your point, I've been involved. So the youngest you can be a member of a political party in Ontario and in Canada is 14. And I got my membership to the Ontario Liberal Party at the age of 14. Was even involved before then, you know, knocking doors, getting sign location, things of that nature. And I find it incredibly rewarding, you know, being able to talk to your fellow neighbours and hear what's on their mind and work to resolve those issues. You know, whether or not you're in government, whether you're in opposition, public service is a rewarding career and a rewarding calling, and it's something that the onus is on all of us to make sure that the issues that our neighbours feel are being addressed at Queen's Park.
Liam?
Thank you once again, likewise, for the opportunity. It's a great pleasure to be on here today. I personally believe that young people today see politics and see the world with optimism and hope. A lot of young people want change, but at the same time, too, a lot of people have lost faith in the leaders that have been before our parliament, federally and provincially, and they're looking for change. They want to see a world that is structured so that they can benefit too, so that not only their generation, but future generations can have the same and equal opportunities as this current generation is. And I also believe that one of the key things that has come up in this election campaign is what party can best address the issues for young people. The questions that have come up regarding education, converting student loans into grants, universal pharmacare, dental care, and child care are all key policies that the NDP has put forward that are all going to benefit this generation. Mm-hmm. So I strongly believe that when we put policies forward like those mentioned, and we work with our young people to hear what they have to say, we will truly have a better voter turnout and better results in future elections.
Thank you, Liam. And Zach?
Well, thanks again, Yusra, for having me on the panel. The political bug bit me at a really young age. I was 13 years old when I first strolled into my then Member of Parliament's office and started volunteering. When I was 14, I could actually join the party. And the rest has been history. I currently serve as president of the Pickering Uxbridge PC Youth Association. And in that capacity, I've had the opportunity to travel the country. I've attended conventions in Vancouver, Toronto, Ottawa. And I've had the opportunity to meet hundreds of like-minded high school-aged and university-aged students. You know, this election is one which will determine the future of Ontario and what opportunities youth will have in our province.
Yep.
And the Ontario PC Party is the only party which will lower taxes as well as create and bring back good jobs to our province,
Yeah.
making a more prosperous future for youth. So thanks again, and I look forward to participating in the panel today.
Okay, thank you guys. So I guess my next question for you is, as a new voter, what are some of your biggest concerns about the election? And Liam, we'll start with you.
Thank you. So this election, one of the key issues on the table, not just for myself but for many young voters, is the cost of university and college tuition. As many of you know who are attending college or university this year, or who have attended in the past or will in the future, young people are burdened at a young age with student debt, significant debts that are long-lasting and are very difficult to pay off. This has been something that I have personally found a passion for politics in. Myself and many of my friends will be attending university very soon, and we're all wondering, how can we pay for this when there's such high tuition in this province? The NDP has proposed this coming election to convert student loans into grants. So that means if you qualify for Ontario Student Assistance Program, then you will have a grant rather than a loan. This is not only good so that more young people can get educated, but will improve our economy. Our economy, when we have more educated people, we are likely to have a better economy and and more individuals having a higher standard of living than if they are not properly educated. And because in this global economy, to get a good job, it's so hard to find the good jobs, we need to ensure that all people have a fair and right education that they wish and they want.
Thank you. And Zach, what do you think about that?
Well, while I can't vote yet, I've been involved with a lot of civic engagement programs to engage youth to vote, and a lot of my friends are 18, and I've been pressuring them to go out and vote.
And what are they saying?
Well, they think jobs is a really important thing, and especially here in the Durham region, we have one of the highest youth unemployment rates, not only in the province of Ontario, but in Canada as well. And, it's very imperative that we can accommodate businesses that are struggling, and by that, the Ontario PC Party is going to cut red tape. We're also going to lower hydro rates, because a lot of businesses are struggling. It's unfair that they've been burdened with all this debt, and under a progressive conservative government, we're going to change that. I'm the son of small business owners, and I see it every day. It's really unfair, and when businesses are struggling, people that can't get jobs. So we need to change that. And yeah, thank you.
And Kyle?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I'm 20, so I've grown up in a Liberal province my whole life when Premier McGuinty took office in 2003. So I've grown up in a Liberal province. I've benefited from the investments we've made in education. Right here in Durham, the Liberal government has doubled funding to the local school boards, which works out to about $800 million. I've benefited from OSAP Plus, not OSAP Plus, from OSAP. I've benefited from that. We're giving free tuition to 235,000 students, including 11,000 right here in Durham and 13,000 single moms across the province. I've benefited from the investments that we're making in education, and I'm worried that people who come after me might not benefit the same way I have. I'm worried when leaders talk about $6 billion in cuts. How many teachers is that? How many students aren't going to get an education because of those cuts? So it worries me that there seems to be a sense of, we've got our investment out of the education system. The next generation can fend for itself, and that's not the Ontario way. We have to make sure that our kids have the same positive experience with the education system that we did. And that means continuing to invest in our schools, continuing to make sure that money isn't a burden, isn't an impediment to go to post-secondary. And we just can't do that by cutting money out of the budget.
Thank you for saying that. And so Zach, I'll go to you with our next question, which is, does it frustrate you that your peers have some of the lowest voting turnout rates of any demographic in Ontario?
It does. It really does. And when I'm sitting in class talking about these issues, I feel that the youth aren't inspired, and it's unfortunate because when youth don't have a seat at the table, there's all these older people who are making decisions which will impact us in the future, and that's really frustrating. I've tried hard to get people engaged in the process, and youth are just frustrated because there haven't been attempts to really reach out to them, and they can't really resonate with what politicians are saying, and it's unfortunate. So to answer your question, yeah, I'm really frustrated.
So I guess the follow-up question is, what do you think it's going to take to bring these first-time voters to the polls?
I think they have to be inspired, and by doing so, I think parties can convey their messages in ways which youth can relate to. I mentioned jobs. So many of my friends are unemployed, and they complain about it every day. So I think if they research the issues and look into parties and their platforms, they can see what party would stick up for them, and then by doing so, could go to the polls and vote for who they'd want to.
Mm-hmm. And Liam, how do you feel about that?
Can you repeat the question?
Oh,
Sorry.
of course. So the first question was, does it frustrate you that your peers have some of the lowest voting turnout rates of any demographic in Ontario?
Absolutely. It does frustrate me greatly. As Canadians, we have been privileged to have the right to vote. That's something our forefathers fought for many generations. And when young people don't vote, that shows a significant problem within our democratic process, meaning that we don't have our young people speaking out, raising issues, and being heard. I truly believe that when we listen to our young people in communities across the province and country, then we can really learn from them what are their issues, what are they most inspired by, what do they want to see changed. That's some of the key issues I think young people have, and we need to ensure that the next premier and the next government are looking to young people and are asking them, what would you like to see different in our province? And I do believe that once we start addressing the issues like tuition, like jobs, like childcare, like high youth, like unemployment, then we will see more voter turnouts. But it has to come from the top, and it has to come not just from promises, but it has to be coming together and uniting as one.
Mm-hmm. And excuse me, Kyle, how do you feel about that?
I'd take a broader approach to it, and I'd say it's frustrating when anybody doesn't vote. It's frustrating that 49%, so 50-50 split. Mm-hmm. It's frustrating that half the province, 40% of the country, 35%. It's frustrating that a large proportion of the population doesn't bother to get out and vote. And I'd just like to take a moment to say that if you're busy on election day, I worked a by-election when it was snowing. Not a valid excuse to go vote, but at least they had an excuse. It's not just on election day. From the moment the writ's dropped, you could go to your returning office and vote by special ballot, which means you write down the candidate of your choice. You could vote by mail. And you might be thinking about, Kyle, what if I get hit by a bus? You can still vote because Elections Ontario will come to you in hospital. So, some of the onus has to be on the voters themselves to make sure that they don't make excuses and that they realize there are a plethora of different methods to get out and cast your ballot. It's not just on Election Day. I've been scrutineering the advance polls since this past Saturday, and it's been, I won't give the numbers, but it's been comforting to see that people are voting not only on election day but also getting out before then. So it's frustrating that people aren't taking advantage of the half dozen different ways they have to vote easily and conveniently, not just on election day.
And how do you think we can bring them to the polls then?
So one way is by literally bringing them to the polls. So our campaign here in Oshawa, and I'm sure my two colleagues would agree that their campaigns do the same thing, is we'll drive voters to the polls. We also coordinate with Elections Ontario so that if there's a voter who has mobility issues, Elections Ontario will go to them at their home to make sure that they vote. So the slogan of Elections Ontario is "We make voting easy," and they really do. It's So by literally bringing them to the polls is one way we can do that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And so I'm wondering, because we are all still pretty young, how much influence does your parents have on your political beliefs? Do you believe you followed what's been going on in your house and that's how you vote during elections? Or have you radically strayed from your household party? and we'll start with you with the first question.
So I'm going to flip that around. Now I'm going to say that my parents and grandparents are probably more influenced by me than the other way around. You know, my father used to joke that he wanted a DNA test done on me because not political at all. You know, he thought cabinet was what you had in your bedroom, not what made decisions for the province and the country.
Yeah.
So it's not that simple. It's not a matter of, and that's an issue when you're talking about lowering the voting age to 16. Is well, is this going to be they're going to vote for their parents, how their parents want them to? But that's not true. You know, there's plenty of motivated, engaged, articulate young people in this province and in this country who are educating their parents and their older generation, because we look at politics differently, as does everyone who has a different experience. So it's a two-way street. You know, I love it when I walk up to a door and I see a Liberal sign and a PC sign on the front lawn, because it shows that it's not just one person in the House making the decision. There is a robust discussion going on at the dinner table across the province, and we need more of that.
And Liam, what do you think about that?
My involvement in politics and my political beliefs did not originate just in my household. It actually originated from my grandmother at a very young age. You know, my grandmother was very passionate about the NDP, about their policies, and about becoming involved in your community and doing what is right for the people. She was very inspirational at a very young age, and I learned that change is possible, and not only can we make change, but it has to benefit everyone. And that's some of the very early lessons I learned about politics, which has inspired me and my family to become New Democrats. So from a very young age, that was brought to me, and I'm very grateful for that.
Could you just repeat the question?
Yeah, so the question was, how much influence does your parents have on your political beliefs?
None, I'd say. I actually went out and joined the Conservative Party based off my own beliefs. My dad often tells me that the political bug skipped a generation in my family. My grandfather was a city councillor in Dodoma, Tanzania, the capital city of Tanzania. My dad's not political at all, and skipped over to me. So I don't think parents have much of an influence on children and their political leanings. I think that children can formulate their own opinions based off what they believe in, and then go out and vote for whatever party they want to.
Thank you. So for this next question, I recently was able to interview Andrea Horwath, and I told her about my panel, and so I asked her what she thought about the low voter turnout rates in Ontario. So we're going to take it over to the prompter here.
You know, I think it's been because people have been told to settle for so long. They've been told that there are really only two choices, and as we've been through a couple of decades of those two choices, things aren't getting better. I mean, young people particularly are feeling a lot of anxiety about the future. They're having a difficult time paying their student loans because the debt when you graduate is so high. The opportunities are few, and people are very nervous about the future. And I think that this particular election is a chance for young people to reject the old solutions of the past and say that we can do something completely different this time around.
Okay, so hearing that, Liam, I'm going to start with you.
Absolutely.
What do you think about her statement?
Andrea is absolutely right. For too long, people in this province, not just young people, but people of all ages, have had to choose between one of two choices, whether it's the Conservatives who will make tax breaks for the rich and the wealthy, but then impose the burden on the middle and lower class, or whether it's the Liberals who join together with the PCs and privatize our public services. I believe that this election, we don't have to choose between just bad and worse. The NDP is giving people an opportunity to allow change for the better. And by that, we are, as a few points, we are, first of all, going to bring back public hydro, and we're going to reduce hydro bills by 30%. We're going to take on student debt. We're going to create 27,000 new student jobs. We're going to end hallway medicine. We're going to create $12 a day childcare, and we're going to finally create a fair tax system in which the wealthy will pay their fair share, while the middle and lower class have it easier in this province.
And
So.
Kyle, if you'd like to address the clip.
Yeah, I think I will address that clip. You know, it's it's unfortunate to see a major party leader badmouth the province like that, not only on that in that interview, but also on the debates. We've seen that because, you know, that it's not like voters have only ever had two choices. And by the way, you don't have two choices. You have about 20 or so across Canada. It's not just the main three or four parties. But as a government, I think the Liberals have done a superb job of evolving with the times. You can't win, what is it now, 6 elections, 5 or 6 elections with the same policies that you ran on in 2003. And I'm glad to see the NDP agreed with that when they supported 3 consecutive Liberal governments between 2011 and 2014 before toppling the government. So, you know, having the government evolve with the times and bringing in measures like free tuition, like publicly funded medication for students and seniors over 65, making sure that students don't have to pay back their loans until they're earning a solid middle-class income. Those sort of initiatives, which have, by the way, been spearheaded by, to a large extent, by the youth wing of the Liberal Party, the Ontario Young Liberals. So there is that two-way dialogue, not just at the partisan level, because I know people at home might not agree with the Liberal Party, but there's also the non-partisan Premier's Youth Advisory Council, which I'd encourage you to look up because they do recruit twice a year. So, you know, the onus is on governments to evolve with the times and to make sure that we continue capturing the youth vote. And for 15 years, we've done that.
And Zach?
Well, you know, I think there's actually a reason behind everything, and there's a reason why why the NDP has only governed once. It's because they make all these promises and they can't really fund them. The same goes for the Liberals. Where are they going to get the funding for all these promises? You know, under a Doug Ford government, we're going to give no tax on minimum wage earners, and a lot of youth work minimum wage jobs. And by the time that tax is taken off their jobs, you know, they don't really end up with much in their wallet, despite them working so hard. And under a PC government, if you earn a minimum wage, you're not going to pay a single dollar of tax. And you know, just to talk about, you know, a lot of the Liberals and NDPs are saying that Doug Ford will make tons of cuts. Not one person will lose a job under a Doug Ford government. That's something he's promised, and that's something that we'll uphold.
Oh, sorry, I've got to respond to that.
We have a bit of time.
Yeah, I noticed you got a lot of paper there, Zach, and I'm just wondering if the PC platform is anywhere in there, because, you know, the two of us have released a fully costed platform, and when you say no jobs cuts, how do we know that? How do we know that Doug Ford isn't secretly doing his math based on firing 25,000 teachers, 50,000 nurses? You know, the promises you've made, bucket beer, which apparently is a priority for Doug Ford, promises like that, they cost money. And until we see the books, and at least to the NDP's credit, they made a $1.4 billion mistake, but at least they released a fully costed platform. Where's your platform? We're
going to release a fully costed platform by Election Day, and where we're going to get, you know, the reason why we won't cut jobs is because we're going to find, you know, deficiencies in the government platforms. The Auditor General, you know, based off a report, there was $1 billion of waste. We'll take that $1 billion, and instead of cutting jobs in schools, hospitals, we're going to use that towards, you know, fixing everything up.
Sorry, Zach, I am going to have to cut you off there.
No
we are running out of time. So for my last question, all of you will have about 30 seconds to answer. And for my final question for each of you, it's who is going to win the provincial election come June 7th and why? We'll go right down.
Well, I think you can have 3 different answers from the 3 different people on this platform. I'm predicting a 125-seat Liberal majority personally out of 124 seats. But no, in all seriousness, the only poll that matters is on Election Day. We've seen, you know, if pollsters are right, we'd have President Clinton, we'd have an NDP majority in BC, and we'd have Prime Minister Mulcair here in Canada. Not to mention we'd have Premier Hudak 4 years ago. So really, I think the real winners out of this are the voters of Ontario, that they've had a robust election. And you know what, I do think that that Premier Wynne has earned another mandate. I think the tireless dedication, you know, people who watched the debate performance this past Sunday, some of them might not have known that she woke up at 5:30, ran a marathon, won her age group, and then won a debate. So sorry, I'm going to have to cut you off. I did say 30 seconds. Liam?
Yes, thank you. And thank you once again for the opportunity to be on the show. I appreciate it. This June 7th, I would like to ask all voters and all viewers to consider what would you like to see for a province. Do we want to see a province that is able to have great opportunities for young people, to have a living wage at $15 an hour, to have the wealthy pay their fair share, to have a dental and universal dental care system, and also have a pharmacare system that treats people at a great quality care, and at the same time is cost effective? Do we want to see $12 a day child care so people have fair opportunities?
Yeah, Liam,
so,
I'm going to have to cut you
okay,
off. Yeah.
yes.
Sorry. And Zach?
Doug Ford and the Ontario PC Party will form a majority government come June 7th. I've knocked on thousands of doors, literally, and people are so tired of the Liberals. And people think the NDP are even worse. People want a safe and sound option, which will not only lower taxes, but also bring good jobs back to the province of Ontario. That's why Doug Ford will become Premier come June 7th.
Okay, thank you. So that is all the time we have for today. Once again, I want to thank Kyle, Liam, and Zach for coming on this panel and having this upbeat and engaging conversation about first-time voters. I'd like to thank the viewers at home for tuning in. Please remember to vote and tune in to the local results on Rogers TV on election night to find out who will be the next Premier of Ontario.